Linda stood on her own front porch at 6:47 a.m., silk blouse already clinging to her back in the August humidity, staring at the brass lock that had betrayed her. She'd lived in this house for 32 years. She'd chosen these locks herself back in 1993, after the break-in that never actually happened but kept her up for weeks anyway. Now her key slid into the deadbolt, turned halfway and stopped, like trying to unlock someone else's life. Behind the door she could hear her granddaughter Macy laughing at something, probably that god-awful cartoon with the screaming vegetables. Linda's chest tightened. She'd promised to make Macy her special Mickey Mouse pancakes this morning. The child was expecting her. She tried the key again. Nothing. Her hand was shaking now and she hated the visible proof of her distress. Linda Patterson didn't shake. Linda Patterson had raised 3 boys largely on her own after Gerald died, had built his struggling hardware store into the most successful one in the county, had served on the school board for a decade. Linda Patterson was not the kind of woman who stood locked out of her own home. But here she was. The moving truck had arrived at Caitlyn and Marcus's apartment at 8 a.m. yesterday, exactly as planned. Linda had been thrilled, genuinely thrilled, when Marcus announced they'd be moving in just temporarily, Mom, until we save enough for a down payment. She'd been rattling around in this 4-bedroom colonial since Marcus went to college anyway. The company was welcome. Macy's laughter filling the halls again was a gift. Linda had even taken the day off from the store, something she never did, to help them settle in. She'd cleaned out the guest room the week before, bought new sheets with little dinosaurs for Macy's bed, stocked the fridge with all of Marcus's favourites. When Caitlyn mentioned they'd need keys made, Linda had waved it off cheerfully. I'll get copies made tomorrow. There's a spare under the blue pot by the garden if you need it tonight. She'd gone to bed at 10 p.m. in her own bedroom upstairs, listened to Marcus and Caitlyn moving around in the guest room, organising their things. Everything had felt right. Everything had felt like family. Now, 7 hours later, nothing fit. Linda knocked, softly at first, then harder. She could see movement through the frosted glass panel beside the door, someone's shadow crossing the hallway. The footsteps stopped. There was a long pause, the kind that happens when someone is looking through a peephole, deciding. The door opened 6 inches, held by a chain Linda didn't recognize. Caitlyn's face appeared in the gap, perfectly made up despite the early hour. Her daughter-in-law had always been beautiful in that sharp, deliberate way, the kind of woman who colour-coordinated her workout clothes and never had a hair out of place. This morning, something in her expression was harder than usual. Linda, not Mom, which Caitlyn had called her for the past 5 years, just Linda. My key doesn't work. Linda kept her voice level, pleasant even, though her pulse was hammering in her ears. I know, I had the locks changed last night. The words landed like slaps. Linda actually stepped back. What, this is my house, Caitlyn. Is it? Caitlyn's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. Because according to the deed Marcus found in your desk yesterday, the one you had him witness and sign last month when you said it was just some boring paperwork for the store, this house was transferred into his name 3 weeks ago. Which makes it our house now, Linda. His and mine. The world tilted slightly. The paperwork. God, the paperwork. Linda's attorney had been so insistent about estate planning after her cancer scare last spring. Get your affairs in order, he'd said. Make it easy on your boys. She'd transferred the house to Marcus, her youngest, the one who'd stayed close while his brothers scattered to Portland and Phoenix. She'd kept the store for herself, set up trusts for the grandkids, done everything the lawyer said would avoid probate issues down the line. Marcus had signed where she'd pointed, asked her if she wanted takeout for dinner, never even read what he was witnessing. She hadn't explained because there was nothing to explain. It was still her home, just with his name on it for legal purposes. For later, for when she was gone. That's not Marcus. Linda raised her voice, trying to see past Caitlyn into the house. Marcus, honey, there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus agrees with me, Caitlyn said coolly. We talked about it last night, about how you've been overbearing, always dropping by the apartment unannounced, criticizing how I dress Macy, questioning our parenting decisions. I never. You told me last week that I shouldn't let her watch TV before breakfast. In my own home, Linda. I was just suggesting. And you keep buying her toys without asking us. Expensive things that we can't afford to match, so then we look like the bad guys when we say no to what she wants. Linda's mouth opened and closed. The kitchen playset she'd bought Macy for her birthday, top of the line, $400, the child's eyes had lit up like Christmas. Was that overbearing? She'd only wanted to see her granddaughter smile. And yesterday, Caitlyn continued, her voice dropping to something quieter and somehow more cutting. While we were unloading the truck, you reorganized our boxes. You unpacked our kitchen things and put them where you thought they should go, in what you still think is your kitchen. I was helping, you said you were overwhelmed. I said I was tired. That's different from wanting you to take over. Caitlyn shifted, and Linda caught a glimpse of Macy in the background, playing with blocks on the living room floor. Linda's living room floor with Linda's furniture, in Linda's house that apparently wasn't Linda's house anymore. Where's Marcus? Linda's voice cracked despite her best efforts. I want to talk to my son. Marcus is giving Macy breakfast. He asked me to handle this. Handle this, handle me, I'm his mother. And this is his house. Caitlyn's hand moved to the door. We need space, Linda. We need to establish our own family here without you hovering over every decision we make. So we're asking, respectfully, that you find somewhere else to live. The morning air suddenly felt thick, hard to breathe. You're evicting me from my own home. Legally, it's not eviction. Legally, we're simply declining to have you as a house guest anymore. Caitlyn's voice was calm, practiced like she'd rehearsed this. We've packed your things. They're on the side lawn, covered with tarps in case of rain. We were very careful with everything. Linda looked to her left. She'd been so focused on the door, on getting inside, that she hadn't noticed. There, arranged with almost surgical precision on the grass she'd mowed every Sunday for 3 decades, were her belongings, her clothes in suitcases, her mother's china in boxes, the photos from the mantel in neat stacks. Her entire life reduced to a yard sale display. My furniture came with the house. The deed specifies that all fixtures and furnishings convey with the property. That's not what I meant when Marcus. Linda's composure finally shattered. Marcus Patterson, you get out here right now, this is insane. She heard him before she saw him, heavy footsteps on the stairs, her boy's familiar tread. Then he was there behind Caitlyn, taller than his father had been, with Gerald's same broad shoulders and weak chin. He wouldn't meet Linda's eyes. Mom, he said quietly, maybe this is for the best, we need to. Caitlyn and I need to figure out our own way, without you always. Without me always what? Loving you, loving my granddaughter. I gave you everything, Marcus, everything. This house, your college education, the down payment on your first car. We know, Caitlyn interrupted. And you've never let him forget it. Every Sunday dinner, every birthday, every conversation, you find a way to remind him what you've sacrificed. Well, now you've given him the house too, so we're taking it, all of it, and we're asking you to go. The chain rattled, the door closed with a soft, final click. Linda stood there for a full minute, maybe more, staring at the wood grain she'd stared at 10,000 times from the other side. She could still hear Macy inside, laughing at something. The vegetables, probably, still screaming their vegetable screams. She turned slowly and walked to the side lawn, her heels sinking slightly into the dew-wet grass. Someone, probably Caitlyn, everything was so precise, had organized her things by category. Clothes here, books there, toiletries in a separate box. Her grandmother's quilt, the one she'd spent a year restoring, was folded neatly on top of the largest suitcase. Linda picked up the quilt, held it against her chest and looked back at the house. Her house, not her house. The house where she'd raised her boys, buried her husband, survived cancer, built a life. From the upstairs window, her bedroom window, she saw Marcus watching her, Macy on his hip. The little girl waved, bouncing excitedly when she spotted her grandmother. Marcus pulled back from the window, disappearing into the shadows of the room where Linda had slept for 32 years. Linda's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her oldest son, Brian, in Portland. Hey Mom, Marcus just called. Said you're having some kind of breakdown. What's going on? She looked at her things scattered across the lawn. She looked at the house with its new locks, its new rules, its new ownership. She looked at the life she'd built being carefully, legally, methodically taken away. Then Linda Patterson squared her shoulders, picked up her phone and started making calls. First to her attorney, then to her accountant, then to the locksmith she'd used for 30 years at the hardware store. If they wanted the house, they could have the house. But they were about to learn something Caitlyn's law degree and Marcus's weakness had overlooked. Linda Patterson hadn't survived this long by being easy to dismiss, and she was done being grateful for crumbs in what used to be her own home. The game had changed, time to change the players.